I'll tell you about the main reasons for refusals of British Academy, Royal Society, and Royal Academy of Engineering applications. So this is for researchers under the peer review route. Now, reason number one is in connection with what you're actually going to be doing in the UK. Now, although this doesn't formally become part of the rules, it's not necessarily in the rules. They're supposed to be assessing your talent rather than what you're going to be doing. The reality is it becomes very, very important. So the statement of what you're going to be doing is important. Sometimes this is a bit chicken and egg, because in order to get a project lined up for the UK, then you need the visa. But to get the visa, you've got to have the project. So which comes first, chicken and egg? Well, you just have to kind of push through that and have a clear statement about what you're going to be doing, and ideally a project, verifiable project lined up, so that it's not too contingent. Now, sometimes you can have situations where funding for a particular project hasn't been granted, and so you're making the application premised on your wishing to work on a project where the funding hasn't been granted, so the funding may not be granted, therefore the project may not happen. So what I would do is have a secondary objective that's set out. So maybe you'll be doing some consulting in addition to the project. But again, try and not make it too vague and too contingent, too speculative. So I'd say that's the main reason, basically, why the applications are refused. And usually it's something in connection with that, with what, it being unclear what the person is actually going to be doing. And off the back of that, then doubts arise as to credibility or a point. It invites them to take points about your merits more generally. Now, the second point is to do with the formalities of the objective assessment letter and this support letter. On these, a lot of people tend to get this wrong. I've seen some very poorly drafted ones. Usually people aren't foolish enough to use, ChatGPT for these letters, because that can just produce really disastrous language, and you can be caught out very easily. But usually there's four more problems with that. Either the formalities aren't met, or the language is off, or there's common language between the objective assessment letter and the assessment letter. So that's the second really problematic area. So I think getting the drafting right of the assessment letter is super important. And after that, it's the merits generally, where merits are borderline. People usually come to me where there's some doubt as to whether or not they qualify, and maybe it's to do with the merits, or it's something to do with the execution of the application. But clearly they can take points on the merits, right, whether you meet the very high threshold that's required. But I would say the challenge in that area is that often I'm working with people, and there's so much that they've done, so many papers, so much research, so much to talk about, and these applications are really quite narrow, and they have to be executed really tightly, in that you've just got basically the two letters. You've got the contents of the application form, the personal statement, and the CV. So there's not a lot. It's not like with the technology applications where you can put in 10 supporting documents and really go into depth. You can't do that. You have to go into depth, but you have to do it in a very short, pithy way. So often the key points, you've got to have strongest points first. Clearly, anyone who's making an application in this area is going to be, researcher, academic, very clever, intelligent people. But I find that I have to just help people to get the strongest points in first, and make sure that they're really clearly signposted across all of the letters. The next point I would say with these peer review applications is that you've got to be careful with eliciting the assessment letters, especially the objective assessment letter, right? Because they will have a close look. The different endorsing bodies will have a close look at the provenance of the letter, because the letter must come from the author. It's okay to give prompts, to provide a package of materials to consider, and reflect language which reflects what they've said about you in the past. But there are various sort of red lines you can't cross over. And I've seen people assisting me. Maybe I'm seeing them for the first time, so I haven't assisted them with the application. They're coming to me afterwards with a refusal, and you can see when looking at the papers that the whole package looks like it was all just authored by the applicant, and even especially where like English is a second language, let's say, and ChatGPT has been used, and then various things have been replicated across the documents, like appears in the personal statement, in the assessment letter, and the objective assessment letter, and it's all a bit of a mess basically. And the difficulty is it's harder to apply the second time if you've been refused with a really problematic application like that, because they're approaching it very skeptically the second time round. So I think if you're doing these applications, best to get it right. Best to get it right first time. Perhaps to state the obvious, but yeah, it really is important to execute it right. And even if you're refused, you don't want to be refused on a sort of quasi integrity basis, or having put together a really horrible application, because if a really messy application, because if they're looking at the second application, they see the first. They can easily just look up the first. Plus, remember, the Home Office themselves are notified of all of the applications. They see all the documents that go through. So the Home Office theoretically could take independent points. Although with the peer review applications, the Home Office tends to stay out of it. I think it's viewed generally by the Home Office as a relatively low risk application route, just because it's so hard to get granted. So if you are applying, I have a consultation service, happy to assist. You can get me on the link below and schedule a call with me on my calendar. If you are going for this route, then yeah, best of luck. If you get the visa, then well done. You're part of a very small elite of people who have got through. So you can give yourself a big pat on the back. It's one of my favorite visa routes. Peer review route, I say, is especially hard, but I have had a good experience in terms of my clients getting through. And I love working with really amazing people who have achieved so much and aren't necessarily blowing their own trumpet. So sometimes it's good to have natural levels of modesty, but I really like helping people to put their case at its highest. I hope that's helpful in flagging areas you can look out for.